Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next episode of the Right Mortgage Network's Lending Insights podcast. I'm Victoria Clark, Head of Lending at the network, and I'll be your host for today's discussion. In this episode, we're focusing on getting to know one of our newer lender partners and really taking the opportunity to understand what sits behind the name, how they work, what they offer, and where they can support advisors and your customers. I'm really pleased to be joined here today by Handelsbanken. With me, I have Steve Macdonald, Head of Intermediary Business, and Petar Novakovic, Broker Liaison Manager. Thank you both for joining me and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Victoria.
Thanks for having us.
Steve, I'm going to come to you first to get us started. For those who aren't familiar, please tell us an overview of Handelsbanken to get a flavour of you as a lender and what makes you a little different in the market.
Yeah, thanks, Victoria. I guess where do you start? I guess like any good story, the introduction should start at the beginning, and for Handelsbanken, that dates back to 1871, would you believe, when we were originated in Sweden. And we've been in the UK since 1982, which surprises a lot of people, and now have a branch network the length and breadth of the country, over 120 branches. We're a relationship bank focused on developing relationships for the long term. And we take that philosophy into our work in the intermediated market. We take time to get to know advisors and on a case level, getting to know the client's situation and aspirations. I think this allows us to look at the bigger picture and to provide flexible mortgage solutions that work. What makes us unique, I think, is our decentralized operating model. This means that decisions are made at a local branch, enabling us to provide a bespoke service. So when you're talking to our branches, you're talking to the decision makers. We're often seen as operating in that interesting space between the high street and private banks. So whilst you'll enjoy a private banking type experience when working with us, we're not actually a private bank. So we have no minimum income, debt size, or asset under management requirements. I think importantly, no matter what the size or nature of the mortgage inquiry, your advisors will deal with a named individual who will work with them with the case from the initial inquiry through to valuation approval and all the way through legals to completion. So I think Victoria, that's a sort of a decent run through of a bit of history, who we are, and why brokers tell us they enjoy the Handelsbanken experience.
Yeah, and what a big history. I didn't realise it'd been going for so long. That is a while, isn't it?
Yeah, just a bit. We're the oldest quoted stock on the Stockholm Exchange.
Wow, that is a claim to fame, isn't it? I didn't know that either. So thank you for that. But thank you. It's really useful, particularly as a lender. You do operate in a unique way. So it's great for advisors to get to know a bit more. And obviously, we'll get into it a bit deeper about what advisors might be used to and doing it in a bit of a different way. But like you say, to make it all a unique and bespoke experience. So,
Yeah.
Pete, picking up on that, service is such a key part of the conversation of what Steve's just said here. But what would you say are the real strengths of Handelsbanken and the key USPs, please?
Yes, a really good point. So from a mortgage perspective, we look behind the immediate transaction and focus on the bigger picture. So we can look to provide mortgage solutions that genuinely work over the long term. Our decisions aren't taken at a remote head office or left to any algorithms in the background. Our decision making happens locally at branch level by experienced colleagues, just direct access to someone who knows the case, the broker, the client, and the detail. And essentially it's full control from start to finish. So as soon as we get that inquiry, we will progress it through to credit approval, liaise with the lawyer, accountant, the valuer, and we actually at our local offices will press the button that sends the money to the lawyer on completion. So we have full entire control over the transaction.
Wow. And then, so that's something we hear as well from time and time again from advisors, like how important that experience is for both them and their customers as well. So having things like that is really interesting. But staying with you, Pete, what is it that really drives brokers to choose Handelsbanken? Like whether that's the product, flexibility, or the types of scenarios you support, what stands out?
Yeah, I think simplicity will break it down to two kind of matters really, and it's through income streams or property. We've got an excellent criteria guide on our intermediaries page, which will detail pretty much everything that I'm about to say, which is extremely useful for self-serving in the broker community. But if we start with multiple income streams, amongst the usual PAYE, bonuses, commission, we've recently introduced restricted stock units, RSUs, or otherwise known as vested shares. So that's something we're able to consider now. Directors, we're absolutely fine with salary and dividends, and we can look to take retained profits, providing there's it's sustainable and there's liquidity in the business. Directors' loans, assessed in a similar manner. And, looking at the more unusual streams, pension income, SIP, SAS, we can look at those. And investment income, providing your high net worth, we can potentially take up to 4% if you're high net worth. So that's £300,000 net income per annum, or £3 million net assets. In terms of property, this probably is one of our biggest sweet spots. And when it comes to the unusual, whether it varies in size or value, we've got no cap on the value or the maximum loan size that we're able to consider. And thinking of the more unusual types of properties, the grade listed, the properties that might have outbuildings or, a portion of land, country homes, if you've got timber framed or steel framed properties there, the types of properties we're able to consider. Keeping on the topic of property, second homes, holiday homes, we're comfortable with those and would deem that a residential mortgage, providing that the client will use that property. We'll also allow them to let out that property via short-term arrangements, via Airbnb, for example, for up to 146 days of the year. There's a £100 consent to let fee in order to access that. So that's a really unique solution that we're seeing quite a lot of at the moment. And one thing that's got quite a lot of spotlight at the moment is the fact that we can have up to 4 applicants on a mortgage, and the ability to take all income streams as well from each applicant, subject to our criteria. But we can also have 4 on a deeds, or any combination of that, which I think is really neat in the marketplace. And in terms of age, that will end up to 75 on interest only and 80 on repayment.
That is so many scenarios, isn't it? I feel like there really shouldn't be a reason why somebody shouldn't start a conversations with you, really, then, should there?
No, exactly. And you can combine all of those things that I've just mentioned in one transaction. So you can kind of gain an idea of our approach when it comes to lending in the resi space.
I find it really exciting that the more that get into, like you say, you've been around for a long time, but this year we're getting into more of the network space and things like that. But especially with the types of customers our advisors have, and they work hard to be able to place these cases. But that's just exciting that so many people can be helped, and obviously people in unique situations, different money situations. It's just great to know that they can really have potentially a situation handled for them. But like I say, there are quite a lot of advisors we have who do deal with this sort of space. But again, some people might not know it is what they have until they know. So to really bring it to life, can you please share a few examples of the types of customers or like case studies where this would work particularly?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with Handelsbanken, what we look for are strong clients, whether that be through income or assets, or ideally a combination of the two. And what we typically see are, your professionals in law or accountancy, or could be valuer, company directors. We see an awful lot of, the usual PAYE employees, sports professionals. The list goes on. It really is, it goes on and on. But in terms of 2 case studies, I think we've got 2 strong ones that I think will resonate. And the first one, as the headline, is a triple borrower, sole proprietor. In this scenario, we had a young applicant on a 3-year apprenticeship who found his perfect long-term home. He had a probation period to complete, with gradual confirmed salary increases within his contract, which were expected during the 3 years employment as he gained experience. But affordability was going to be a challenge. So adding to the challenge, the parents were keen to support. There was a really good opportunity to buy a property, and with it being a challenge just on the son's income alone, the parents wanted to be part of the mortgage. So if you refer back to the last point I made, we're able to take up to 4 on the mortgage. So on this particular scenario, we had 3 on the mortgage and only 1 on the deeds. So 3 being the son and parents, and then just the son on the deeds alone. So that was quite a nice scenario in which we could support. In terms of another solution, well, unusual property characteristics for foreign income is the headline on this one. So we had some clients that had found a perfect coastal retreat, which also had holiday lets and land on the title. Demand for the property was high, so they needed to move quickly. The challenge on this one was lenders found that the fact that there was outbuildings and land a bit problematic. It's something we see quite often, and providing that there's no kind of commercial tenancies attached to the land, we can get comfortable with that. It was further complicated by the fact that one applicant worked for an overseas company receiving income from bonuses paid in a foreign currency. So that was something else that we had to overcome. But this kind of transaction is what we see regularly, and dealing with property that with that includes land and buildings is really not new to us, and neither was the income. So we worked with the broker to understand the client's full financial situation. We worked with all other parties so we could set expectation that we could work that particular timeline. We've got a comprehensive product range, which you'll again find on our intermediaries page. And with income being in foreign currency mortgage, a foreign currency, we're able to offer a foreign currency mortgage, which we accept 5 currencies, which again is on our website. And we were delighted to assist in a timely manner by keeping everyone informed. So again, you can probably see that there's a number of facets amongst both transactions which need perhaps a bit more understanding and some follow-up conversations with the right people. But we can get to completion, providing that it all stacks up and we're comfortable with what we're presented with.
That's just phenomenal, isn't it, really? And like you've already mentioned, the fact that it's somebody working within a branch really does give that personal service, doesn't it, I imagine, in such a case like that?
Yeah, exactly. And in some scenarios, we have really strong connections with the local valuers and lawyers and whatnot. And in this one, we were quite happy to give the valuer a pre-call to say, look, this is the property, these are the features. Do you foresee any issues? So we can't rely on that, conclusively, but I think it's quite a nice touch that we have such good relationships that we can have an early conversation, and they might say, Pete, look, this isn't one for us, it's not wasting our time, or we've seen this property before, we know it, valued it a number of times in the past, and that really does add confidence when you've got, I guess, an unusual type property.
Yeah, and so bespoke as well. But that's really insightful, and I'm sure plenty of the listeners as well may not recognize those scenarios in their own pipelines, but when it does come up, they know somebody's going to be able to help. So that's really insightful. Thank you for that. And to round things off then, when an advisor has a case for you, what is the support throughout the process? What does working with Handelsbanken look like?
Yeah, I think we've probably covered that in these scenarios, but look, let's go over it again, because I think it's a nice way of working, and it's very hands-on, is what I would say. So from inquiry through to obtaining the documents for the case, through to credit approval and valuation, the local office will have full control from start to finish. So that's from picking up the phone to that first inquiry through to actually pressing the button on sending the monies to the lawyer. We're in control of that entirely. In terms of hands-on, I think, I've already mentioned that, we're happy to work with all parties involved, whether it be the accountant, if we're relying on undrawn profits, as an example, making that pre-call to the valuer if there's any unusual characteristics, or, which we do see, depending on where you are in the country, having a conversation with the lawyer if there's an agricultural tie or an overage attached to the property. These are all things that our local kind of valued networks allow us to have give confidence, I guess, to all those in the chain that we can support and assist in that particular transaction. In terms of using Handelsbanken and registering with us, again, it's all on our intermediaries page, and it's a simple sign-up process where you complete a couple of forms and send it into our intermediary.registration mailbox.
No, that's great. And it really highlights as well that the relationship-led approach that you're known for is really true, isn't it? And it's just getting to know our advisors and being bespoke. So really the best thing that advisors can do is register, isn't it? And get started with the process and potentially get some cases your way.
Yeah, exactly that. And picking up the phone at the earliest opportunity is probably the best thing I can possibly say. We differ to other lenders in the fact that we don't credit score. We're not reliant on a computer giving us a yes or no. It will be almost an old school approach whereby we look at the income, the assets, the expenditure, and the entire affordability, and then we look to build the case and manually underwrite that particular mortgage. So quite refreshing, we're told by brokers out there, where you can pick up the phone and speak to someone about a case.
No, and I love that. And definitely in this market, so I think that we're only going to see more and more customers who may need to lean that sort of way as well. But no, thank you very much. So Pete, Steve, thank you both. That's been really valuable to spend some time understanding more about Handelsbanken and how you support their advisors and then their customers. Also, as always, thank you to everyone listening. We really value your feedback and the conversations that come off the back of these episodes. So please do keep sharing your thoughts and topics you'd like us to cover. But thank you both. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
But yeah, that's all we've got for today's episode of the Lending Insights. I've been Victoria Clark, joined today by Stephen Pete from Handelsbanken. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch up again soon.